All right, welcome to the Smart Art Business Podcast. My name is Rachel Wilkins, and I am delighted to have a very special guest with me today. I have the wonderful Ashley Delonas joining me today. Ashley is in Pocatello, Idaho, in the most beautiful surroundings, has a gorgeous studio, as those who are watching the video will see. And she is really just multimedia artist, working with bone, working with glass. And we're going to have a good conversation today about something that just happened very recently for Ashley. And that was a $25,000 collector who came along and bought a $20,000 piece and a $5,000 piece. So we're going to get into the details of how that moment came to be. Ashley, welcome. It's so great to have you here.
Hey, Rachel. It's been an honor to be here.
So exciting. So we're going to go way back. Obviously, everyone's going to want to hear all about how you landed that $20,000 sale, and we're going to get into the details of that. But most importantly, I think for folks is just to see what happened before that, right? To see that grit, the grind, the perseverance that you've gone through. So we're going to go way back. We're going to talk about your story, and then towards the end of the episode, folks, stick around and you're going to hear how that sale came to be. So first things, Ash, tell me about kind of those younger days as an artist. You were a single mom. Tell us a little bit about your experience back then.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It has taken me about 12 years to get to a point where I've mastered my craft to be able to build something that I could sell for 20,000. But it really has taken me the last 12 years to evolve into that point. And I really attribute a lot of this evolving through a lot of my earlier days when I was a single mother and going to school. For the first time, I was 23 and I started enrolling in art classes at Idaho State University. And the journey began through so up until this point, I hadn't made or created any artwork until I was pregnant. And I did a lot of polymer clay light switch covers that I just made for my house and for friends, and people were really enjoying them and telling me how creative they were. And I was offered to start making and selling these decorative light switch covers at our local farmers markets. So throughout the summer months, I would set up a booth, just me and my son, and we would sell these light switch covers that I was making. And at first, it kind of just started out as a hobby, week to week, and just seeing if I could make it. But it, slowly grew and gained a little bit of a following, and it supported me throughout my entire college career. I think I was enrolled in art classes for about 5 years, and throughout that time, when you go to school for art, you get to expose yourself to a lot of mediums. So I always consider this phase and chapter of my life where I did a lot of explorations in different mediums. So I was making the light switch covers that were selling locally weekends at the farmers markets, but then I'd get to go to classes Monday through Friday and learn how to do paintings and drawings and sculpture. And it was really healing for me because up until that point, I had been with my son's father from when I was about 15 to 24, and we got divorced right when my son was, I think he was about 6 months old. So pretty much when he was a baby. And, through that experience, I realized how toxic and abusive that relationship was. Going to school, you got to practice in different mediums and learn different techniques, and it was very healing. And I was loving every bit of it, and it allowed me to expand different thought processes and develop some new ideas. But along with my time in college, I was also a part of the outdoor education program, and I ended up getting a minor in outdoor education. And a part of that was because of my love for being outdoors and for climbing mountains and just being in nature, doing everything that's great in Idaho. So
one of the things that I thought was interesting that you'd said when we were chatting previously was that you kind of went to school for like a plan B.
Yeah. And that's not something I was completely aware that's what I was doing until later in life, maybe even after I graduated or got my degree, that's what I was doing. Because the entire time that I was going through school, the 5 years that I was exploring all these mediums, learning and growing, I always had that negative chatter, that pressure that I would see from family and friends who, were hearing that I was majoring in art, and how risky that is, or what can you do with an art degree. So I ended up, deciding to be an art teacher. So I was majoring to be a secondary art teacher because that was a safe plan B. It was still allowing me to, be an artist and, and be a part of that. But it also gave me that nice 401k and that retirement plan. So I went to school to secure that plan B. And I don't per se regret that. And I learned a lot of valuable lessons from that. But reflecting back on that, if I could have, knowing what I know now, if I could have invested all that time and effort into, hiring coaches like yourself, I think I'd be on a different playing field right now. Going to art school doesn't necessarily teach you how to be an artist entrepreneur. So
fascinates me that they don't teach business in art schools. Like, it's like such a crazy concept. It's like, here's all the theory, here's all the the practical stuff, but go out and figure the rest out by yourself.
And I have a lot of criticism for a lot of my professors and stuff who would, see me making and selling these light switch covers, and they weren't deemed fine art. And it was like that I should be, doing better and greater things than just selling these light switches. But I was the only person that I'm aware of who could make that make ends meet. I didn't have to go be a waitress or be a bartender to make ends meet. I was able to just week after week show up at the farmers market and slowly gained a following and a collector base, and was able to pay my bills at it. And but I could feel some judgment and some like it wasn't deemed fine art. So it was challenging at times.
So you go through all these experiences, you're really doing something that a lot of artists don't do early in their career, especially as they're just, going through education, and that you're able to sustain your life, be a mother, show up for your child, and be a working artist and making money. But you were still processing a lot of grief. You were still going through a lot of healing. It was around about that time that you took to the mountains. You said you have this passion for outdoor life, and it was healing for you. What was it about being outside, and what was that experience like? Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, growing up, I got to always be immersed in nature and wilderness, but it wasn't until I actually became pregnant that I started doing art and also climbing big mountains. There was something about becoming a mother that pursued me and wanted a higher, achievements and to do bigger things. And so we have these mountains that are in Idaho. They're called the Idaho Niners, meaning that there's 9 mountains over 12,000 foot in elevation. And so me and my dad and my brother, we set out to climb the tallest one, Mount Bora, and we had accomplished that. And I remember standing on top of that mountain, and I think I'd been divorced at the time for about a year, first year in college. And I remember feeling so powerful that if I could, conquer something like this, what is it that I could do? So, once we made it to the top, we promised ourselves that we would challenge ourselves to climb all the 9. And so through that experience, I actually ended up meeting my future husband, Blake, and he was able to climb the rest of the mountains with us. But in addition to that, he taught us a lot about hunting and shed hunting in particular. That's something I never grew up with, was being around hunters or shed hunting, but I learned that you could learn where the deer, moose, and elk migrate and where they winter and where they could have their antlers be harvested. So a lot of people don't know that antlers fall off of their deer, moose, and elk's heads every year, and it allows them to make way for the next year's growth instead of antlers. And so there's big sport down here in the West where people go out and they'll have their honey holes, and you can go shed hunting. And through meeting Blake, he taught me everything about how to do that. And it, once I found the sport, it even resonated with me even more. It's it's our favorite pastime to do still now to this day is shed hunting. So we would climb mountains, and on the descent we would spend our time. We'd backpack the rest of the way and just try and find different spots where you could collect these dropped antlers.
And these things are huge.
Yeah.
These are not just small little items that you can put in your backpack. I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking like, give our audience like an idea of like the size of these things.
So there's basically 3 different kinds of antlers that we find. They're from either deer, moose, or elk. And they all kind of drop at different times of the season, which kind of allows you to focus in on one particular animal at a time. Like moose typically drop in the winter, deer drop in the spring, and elk drop their antlers in the early summer. And they all come in different sizes. And I'm blessed to live in the mountains here in Idaho. In our backyard, we get to have a lot of moose and deer that come through. And I've got to see these bucks grow their antlers from year to year. And it became a big symbol for me because you would watch one buck come in and he'd have a small set of antlers this year, and then he would shed, and you would, spend a couple of days trying to find where he had, dropped those. And then you'd see him come back the next year and they'd be bigger and better. And it became a big symbol for me in my artwork about shedding the old to make way for new growth. And it became kind of so profound for me that on my senior show in college, my last year, they make you do a big gallery opening, and I created my first glass antler chandelier, and it was in homage to that ritual to make way for new growth.
It's so beautiful and poetic, especially given, the difficult times that you had been going through, to then have this like visceral, like emotional experience of having something symbolic that represents healing and growth and moving on and shedding things and letting them go. So you bring these things home. You have this great studio. You've been creating, these light switch covers. You've been making money, but you have this stack of sheds just kind of mounting up in your home. At what point do you say to yourself, I'm going to start adding glass here and I'm going to add light? Like what was the motivation there?
Yeah. So to back up a little bit, when I was making the light switches, I was kind of burning out on making all this. So my mother, I always grew up watching her be a stained glass artist, doing traditional stained glass windows and light boxes and stuff. And she was moving, and she had kind of gifted me. I was getting ready to graduate college, and she had gifted me a lot of stained glass. And I was making these stained glass feathers and little sun catchers in addition to the light switches at the markets, and they were sailing. And so I was kind of getting exposed to glass then. And then when I met Blake and our antler piler started growing throughout the year or two, it just kind of was that light bulb moment where I was making these glass objects and sun catchers, and I was looking over at my pile in the corner growing, and it just kind of happened of like, hey, you should put glass inside of antlers. I've never seen that be done before. So that's what I did. And it was during my first year or my last year of getting ready to graduate and get ready for my senior show. And I had said to myself, well, I want to make a glass antler chandelier. And so I had made 25 individual deer antlers, all soldered with glass in between the tines of bone. And that was my first antler chandelier. And a lot of people loved. I got a lot of good feedback on it. But when it came time to try and sell that, it had taken me about 6 months to build my whole entire show. And it took me a long time to eventually sell it. So I kind of got discouraged a little bit from making glass antler pieces because I couldn't sell them as easily as I could something that took me just a day to make. I mean, these would take me, like a week or a couple, in that case, about a couple months to make that chandelier, and I couldn't sell it. So I kind of took a break from making glass antler chandeliers until around COVID time.
So it's like, because you kind of trade in time for money, and we've talked about this before, but tell us how many light switches do you think you've made in your career?
Right. I have been able to keep track of around 3,000 in the last 12 years that I've made and sold them. And it's great to see the evolution in them because I got to see, I took pictures of them all and I got to see kind of how they grew and how my skills set grew. But, there came a point where I was no longer satisfied with myself with just making them. Like I felt this pull, this calling, like you should do more. So then I would do, I started doing glass objects and glass feathers and glass sun catchers. And even those, and I started making glass Idahos. There was this pull that was like, this is still in a way beneath you, like you can evolve to more. And I'd look at these antlers that we would find when we go out in the mountains and seeing how big and beautiful they are. And I all I wanted to do was make things out of these for a long time to get to that point.
What do you think it is about light that speaks to you so much? You think about, you've made 3,000 light switch covers, you're making glass antler chandeliers, like everything is around light. Like, what do you think? Can you trace that back to your earlier days, or if anything?
I think I can. I, as a little girl, would always want, every Christmas and every birthday, I wanted new lampshades. I don't know if anybody have seen the 1990s, the 1980s vintage hanging retro lamps, or the lights that you could tap and the light would come on and off, or even the stained glass ones that would come in like the form of a butterfly or a turtle that you can buy at local Bed Bath and Beyond stores. I loved seeing those, and I wish I had pictures of my room with all my lampshades everywhere, because it is something that I always gravitated toward, but it never dawned on me that that is what I would be making later in my life. It took me, going through that trauma and starting out my medium being something completely different to evolve into that thought process to get me to, you should do glass antler chandeliers. So
It's pretty amazing. In addition to the glass and the light and the antlers themselves, the sheds, you also are using a lot of natural gemstones, precious metals that are found where you live. I mean, you live in a really beautiful part of the world. Tell us a little bit more about that and some of the other things that you use to actually create these beautiful pieces.
Yeah. So I don't just solder in stained glass pieces in between the tines of bone. I incorporate all sorts of precious gemstones, agates, quartz crystals, and just raw stones that most of them are found here locally, sourced here locally, but sometimes I'll incorporate like amethyst or rare stones that are, derived from Brazil and other places of the world. But you can solder those obviously very carefully. And it took me, about 10 years to perfect how to not damage or burn up a crystal. But I weld those in between the tines of bones, because a lot of times when you find these antlers, they would be next to a pile of crystals that are coming out of, the mountains, or you had a heavy pack of antlers on your back, you're coming down a scree field, and, I ended up finding 10 extra, precious gemstones on there. So I like it to people go out and look for mushrooms, or they go out looking for certain kinds of birds and stuff. Like shed hunting and gemstone hunting are, they're all derived from the earth. So it's beautiful, really.
And isn't there some stat about Idaho and gemstones?
Yes, Idaho is the gem state. We are known as the most gems per the state than any other. So people come here to go mine opal or diamonds, and if you climb high enough and know where these places are, you can go back year after year and collect different crystals in the same spots, because it's kind of like shed hunting. That once you find your honey hole, that's where they're at.
Wow, amazing. So, you start to develop this craft, you start to have a vision for what it is you want these pieces to become, the elements, the different personalities per se to each of these pieces. And then you start applying for shows. Yep. And then COVID.
Yep.
You get into a really prestigious show, you're really excited, and then it gets canceled because of the pandemic. Yep. Tell us what happened in that moment.
Right. So when I graduated in 2016, I had told myself, I'm going to go as hard as you possibly can, see what you can make, pressure's on to see if you can be a full-time artist. So that's what I did. And so for about 2 years, I was doing around 30, 36 shows a year, trying to find my niche, find those people who liked my stuff, trying to narrow it down. And I was burning out, and I was actually tired of just mass producing hundreds of small Idahos and light switches. I was burning out. Like, it was no longer fulfilling, kind of my artistic soul. And I kept having this calling in the back of my mind of, you should do bigger, better projects. You should make something that takes you not just a day, a week. I want to make something that takes me a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. And I wasn't giving myself the permission to do that. And it wasn't until I got accepted into that show that I was like, okay, this is it. This is your chance to make that passion project that you've always wanted to do. And then at that same time, COVID did happen. And it was bittersweet for me, because what it did was it canceled all my shows. And so I remember kind of panicking, because I was like, this is it. How am I going to make a living during a pandemic when all my shows got canceled? Who's going to buy art? It's a luxury item. So I kind of focused my business and just built a website and shifted all my sales online, which I'm so thankful I did. But it also gave me the time of not having to be at shows to do those passion projects. And so I was like, I want to make another Antler chandelier. The one I made for my senior show when I graduated, it just, I absolutely loved making it. And I knew I had better, more elaborate designs in my mind. And so I finally allowed myself to do that. But, when I found out COVID happened, it had canceled my show that I got accepted into, which ended up being a great thing, because it gave me about 2 years to build a strong body of work. And throughout that time, I created a really strong body of big pieces that, like the one I sold for 20,000, took me about 4 months to make. And then I made a couple other smaller Antler glass chandeliers that took me about a month each to make. And I'm just so thankful for that, because if those shows wouldn't have been taken away from me, I don't think I would have given myself the permission to build something.
I love that, giving yourself permission. I think a lot of artists found themselves in that situation where, life stopped as we knew it. Life was paused. And in many ways, I think a lot of us went into the studio with just the idea of time. The world is slowing down. Like, let's create. Like, I think there'll be some beautiful art and some beautiful music and beautiful things that will come out of such a distressing time, because we gave ourselves permission. And what a beautiful thing.
What happened to me. And that's exactly what happened.
It's amazing. So around that time, you've had this mindset of like, this is your plan B. This is, not going to be a career. This is just, you're making enough money to pay the bills and then, get back to plan A. But you start listening to podcasts. You listened to our podcast, which was fantastic. And you said you found yourself in kind of like an existential crisis around that time. Like, you were just feeling like you've been trading time for money. You were tired. And you randomly start listening to these podcasts. So tell us what shifted around that time.
Yeah. And ironically, it was also the same time that kind of COVID happened. I was kind of granted all this extra time, and I was just burnt out. I had been graduated at that point from school and doing art full time and making a living and paying all my bills for, I think it was about 3 years. And I was making around $30,000, 33, and then also probably investing $10,000 in material. So I'm really only coming home with 23,000. And I kept having this conversation to me year after year, like, this is not enough. It's not enough. I can't make a living off of this. I can't keep mass producing all these small little things and make it, I'm going to have to go back to my plan B of being an art teacher. So it was my all or nothing. When I got accepted to that show, I just started soul searching. I was like, I need somebody to help me get laser focused and narrow down. So I started listening to random motivational podcasts, and I kind of just narrowed my search down to art coach, and you popped up, and I clicked on one of your episodes and just let it rip. And I remember I like purged on like 10 episodes, like in one big sitting, all day, just back to back, listening to you. And you literally changed my life, because you were the one person who was tearing down all those years of like self-doubt and judgment from that weren't even mine. It was from everybody else that, that I know and love and who love me back. But, we all have these beliefs about like a starving artist, and nobody believed that I could make it work. And I could feel everybody's pressure of like, well, she made it work this year. Can she do it next year? And, she's not really making that much money. So I had nobody in my corner who was educated enough to help me through that process. And it was just literally just listening to your podcast, one episode at a time. And I remember you had talked about that you open up your art business boot camp twice a year, and the enrollment time was this year, and it was gonna, at this moment, it was going to close. And I just gave myself permission. I said, you've invested all this time and money into going to art school. Not once did you have an art coach. You had art teachers, but that's a difference. And so I said, I just gave myself the permission, hire her, see what she can do. And I did, and I got to have my first one-on-one with you, and then being a part of the group sessions with you. I finally found that void. I had nobody who I don't think truly believed that this could be it until I met you guys. And I mean, it really opened up so many doors for me, and tore down years of self-limiting beliefs that I didn't even know I had. And I had to become, kind of awoken to it, to tear them down, to shed them, to let them go. So
first of all, I adore you. You are like just the perfect, most coachable person, because you came into this just willing, right? You came in with like, what have I got to do? You have so much grit and so much, such a strong work ethic like I've never seen. And you were willing to do the work. Not everybody's willing to do the work. And you showed up and you're like, tell me what I got to do. And some of it's not fun. Let's be realistic. Some of it, you got to stop doing some things that you've been doing, because that age old expression of what got you to where you are today is not going to get you to where you want to be tomorrow.
Yeah.
You got to change. And I just love that you came to this. Like, we start working together, you come into boot camp and you start doing the work, and you spend like a year of just preparing really for that big moment that eventually, we're going to get into. But you do the work, and that is, I can lay out, paths to success. I can give tips, but they don't work unless you do. And you're somebody that just took it and ran. And I'm just so proud of you. And you're gonna hear how amazing Ashley has done with this. But I'm just so excited to work with somebody who really truly wanted it. And watching you soar is just, it reminds me why I do this podcast. It reminds me why we're 70 episodes into a podcast that doesn't make any revenue. We don't have paid ads. We don't have anything where this is not a money-making machine. Like, I do this because I want to be of service, right? And to hear you say something like it changed your trajectory, it changed your life and your business, is just so incredible to me.
And I really the best example I can give is, the best athletes have the best coaches. And, I don't know a lot about sports, but, I do know that that's true. And you just got to be that person in my corner who taught me everything and, was my voice. Because, I was accepted into that show. And I do believe if I wouldn't have hired you, I don't think I would have asked for my worth with that piece. That would have been the hardest. That was probably one of the things you helped me get to that point. Like I had told you, like, I want to make these Antler chandeliers. I'm accepted into this really prestigious show. It's going to be where all the collectors and designers are going to be. And if it wasn't for your guidance and you telling me, no, this is worth $20,000. It took 4 months of your life to build and to design and to perfect. You are worth it. I probably would have listened to everybody that I have always listened to, and nobody ever wanted to give me mean, intended, ill advice. It was just unintentional. Like, my biggest advice is just to listen to us experts in that field, and you're an expert in that field, and you really helped me get to that point where of pricing my work, and then just shedding those beliefs that I could do it. Because if I didn't have that, I'm sure the outcome would have been totally different.
I think limiting beliefs are something that just affects so many of us in so many different ways. Like, I think sometimes we base our truths on the opinions of those around us. So they can be very insular, they can be very protected, and you think that that is it, right? That can only go this far. I'm only capable of going this far because the people I know, love, and respect, who you still know, love, and respect, have only been this far themselves. And it's not until you step outside or like take a step back that you realize that there is no lid on what you can accomplish. It's only what you tell yourself or what other
the limitations you put on yourself. Yeah. I mean, I remember listening to a podcast that one really resonated with me. And you had said that a lot of times people get stranded on that desert island theory, right? And that's what I did all throughout my college career, going to art school. And then when I graduated and I knew the pressure was on to see if I could actually be a full-time artist, that's what I was doing. I was trying to be every kind of artist. I was trying to be the artist who was in retail stores, trying to be the artist at every farmer market, every major art show and art fair, and then online sales. And I was just spreading myself way too thin. And I would see that shiny island, right? The big island that you're like, oh, I want to get over there. I really actually want to build glass antler chandeliers. But, you know, that voice in your head that says, oh, you can't dream that big, and it shuts you up. And so I just stay on these islands and I'm familiar with that. I know I can make money doing this. I know I can do this, but it was eating up all my time. And it was no longer serving me artistically. And I wanted to evolve into that next point. Just like as I watched the deer or the moose evolve every single year, they get bigger and better antlers. But they have to shed that old to make way for that new. And, that analogy and symbolism in my life also made me have that jump and taking that, risk with you and investing my time into your courses. Because I was lost. I was in that pinnacle. It was all or nothing. It really was.
Let's talk about that, because 2021 was your all or nothing year. You were like, you even said to me, you're like, this Western design show that's coming up, if I don't have success, I'm like, this is it. Like, I'm done. Like, you were really set on that. I mean, I was a little afraid as a coach because I never want anybody to focus on the outcome, but I felt it with you. You had so much invested, not just financially, but like emotionally, spiritually, mentally. It was all in that basket. Tell us about some of the, just give us a little ride along for that for 2021.
So the reason why it was my all or nothing is like you said, I invested everything, but there's so many layers to that. In order for me to build these glass antler chandeliers, it takes months and months. So during that time, I'm pulling 10, 12-hour days trying to learn how to structurally engineer and build these things so that they're sound and artistic and beautiful. And it took all my time away from my 9-to-5 job, which was, selling stuff at the farmers markets. And so I had risked making things that I knew would sell. And so I was kind of putting myself in a financial hole month after month after month. I had, up at that point, I had a savings of like, I think just shy of $10,000. And I'm super proud of that because that was all from art sales. And I had spent every single dollar of it in the booth fee, in the Airbnb, all the accommodations, all the advertisements, all the staging services I paid for. I'd spent every single dollar into it. So that was a big financial risk. And that was really weighing on me. I've never taken a financial risk like that for a show. Most of the shows I've paid for like a $500 booth fee, not a $4,000 booth fee. And so it was just pressure, it was the pressure, like you just spent. Now I look at it as an investment, but at the time I was just like, you just spent all this money on this and you don't know if it's going to pay off. And you're losing all this time making one chandelier and forfeiting all your guaranteed sales that you would make at your shows and at the farmers markets. And so it was this, all or nothing mentality, because then in my mind, if I couldn't recover from that, there's no way I could have justified making another one. And that's kind of where my mindset was. And, that's reflecting back on it. And yes, that was a toxic mindset. But nonetheless, that is my truth. And that's where I was. And so it was a ton of pressure. I had forfeited the whole summer. I didn't go on any camping trips, no hiking, no swimming, no birthday parties, no family reunions. I sacrificed it all. I had to. It takes about 1 week per panel to solder all the crystals and gemstones and fossils in between the bones. And so I just said, this is your shot, Ashley. You've wanted to make this for the last 4 years. You've silenced that little voice saying you don't do it. When I started getting your coaching and I got accepted, that's when I said, this is it. This is your year to see if you can pull off something that you've dreamt about doing. And I think all of us artists dream about making that first 5-digit sale, and a lot of us will silence ourselves and say, just stick to making prints and turning them into stickers or whatever it is you make it sell. But it no longer was serving me, and I had to listen to that. And so it was the biggest risk I've ever taken.
I feel like so many fears and just so much came up for you in that process. And I remember having some calls with you where you were just, you were close to tears. Like there was so much emotion, and you just put everything into this. And I remember sitting with you, and it was pretty close to the show, and we were talking about pricing, and you had a number that you had on this massive, gorgeous, absolutely blood, sweat, and tears piece that you've created. And you told me the number, and I said, I want you to double it. And I remember watching you just like feel so uncomfortable with that, like the idea of that. What was that?
To that point, the highest amount of money I'd ever sold that one piece was, I think, like $1,500, which that piece took me about a week to complete. And but I knew when I looked back, I had logged every single hour I put into that glass antler chandelier, and it was 4 months of work. And if I did not price it for the price you told me to price it for, I wasn't even getting, I think, close to minimum wage. And it was like unacceptable.
We did the math. Remember, I was like, with the price that you had, we like broke it all down by the hours, the materials, the time, everything. And I remember saying to you, are you okay with that hourly rate for who you are and what you do?
And I think there's a level of maturity that happens. It took me 12 years to get to this level of maturity and develop this kind of social proof. And I had to slowly show up after show after show after show, sell after sell after sell, to finally be like, I've evolved as an artist. I've perfected this craft. I'm worth it. And I had to have that voice of that coach to silence all that other negative chatter. Because when people would ask, well, what are you wanting to, how much you expected to get out of the chandelier? And I would tell them the number, the gas and the odds, and they're like, oh, good luck getting that kind of making that sell. And it's very depressing, and that can get in your head. And if you do not have somebody who's saying, don't listen to that, that's not accurate. There's a thriving art market and enough room for all of us. I did not have that. Like I said, I think the outcome would have been totally different.
So you drive out to Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Yep.
You set up your booth. This is your all or nothing time. Yep. It's finally arrived. You have kind of a slow time. It's a pretty slow show, given the, right in the middle of the pandemic. Tell us what happened on that. Was it the last day?
It was, I think the show was 4 days or 3.
It's like the Saturday or something, right?
It was that Saturday. And I'm so used, the shows that I'm so used to doing are fast paced. There's a lot of people, at the markets, there's a lot of people. So you're constantly talking to people, whether you're making sales or not. There's just this constant flux. I probably see and talk to 2, 3, upwards to 400 people every single week, depending on which fair or which show I'm doing. And so I'm just kind of used to that kind of like busyness. And so when I step into Western design, I knew it was more high end. I knew that's where they had a whole area where it's dedicated to the interior designers who were staging some rooms with their designs. And it was just a totally different class and level and bar. And so it was slower. The clientele was a little bit older, the people who were coming in, which, I'm not used to that. So I'm making all these assumptions like, oh, it's, maybe it's a dead show, maybe it's an off season. And I remember the first day I had a couple interested people, but no big bites. And so, I'm trying to be optimistic, listening to your advice and just trying to enjoy the moments. And the second day comes, and that's when they were doing the award ceremony. And the award ceremony was approaching, and I could see all these people leaving their booths. getting ready, going towards the back to go listen to the awards, and I getting ready to leave, and I grab my bag and I go to head out, and I see these two ladies walk in. And so I pull back and I come back, and I could hear their gasps, and they're like, oh my gosh, look at this. And oh, it's so beautiful. And I hear one of them say, where would you put it? And she turns and she's like, how much is it? And I said, it's $20,000. And I turned around like you told me, walked away. Well, I took one step and she said, I'll take it. And I turned around and I pointed at it and I said, did you hear the price? And she said, $20,000. And she just handed me her credit card. And at that moment, I just melted. And there's this weight was lifted off my shoulders. This, she had validated everything that had taken me so, blood, sweat, and tears, like you said, it was gone in a matter of, 1 second. And I remember ringing up her price, and she ended up buying a second piece, this moose antler that I had put glass to, and that was 5,000. And I remember reading her total, and it was like 25,000 something. And just no big deal. She signs it, and we hug, and we get pictures, and then she's, I got her information, and luckily she lived in the Jackson Hole area, so I didn't have to take that piece, across country and install it. So I got her address and planned on getting it installed into her house a couple days later. And when she left, I remember turning and seeing, and my son and mom were there, and they got to witness the entire thing. And that was probably one of the best moments, is getting to see my son be a part of that moment, because that was such a big moment for me. It took away everybody's belief in, I guess, in me, in the art market, that you could sell something for that kind of price. It just evolved, or shed off me. It just went away. That monkey off my back, it finally came off. So it was great, because after the show ended and we packaged up, I got to go to her house and install it, and it took around 4 hours to get it all installed and take the old one down and put the new one up. And I got to know her on a little bit of a personal level, and she's an entrepreneur herself, and she had multi-millionaire client, and the things that she's accomplished in her life only further gave me more I guess validation to that you can do it, that you need to quit telling your big dreams to small-minded people, because this is being an artist, entrepreneur, making a living, selling your work creatively. It's not something that's common, at least not around where I am. I still yet don't know anybody here personally who has been making a living year after year with their art. And yeah, I am that person. And it gave me that justification to go further. Like, there's always kind of a bigger island behind that one, where I want to do, pieces that maybe take me an entire year to do, an antler chandelier that maybe is installed in some museum, or it gave me the permission to keep dreaming bigger. So it's hard to explain. It was one of the best moments of my life.
I get really choked up when you tell your story, because I do, because I know what you went through to get it.
Yeah.
I know how,
yeah.
I know how symbolic.
It was beyond building and the designing of it. I mean, there was so many layers. Like, I've never had a business logo or brand or slogan, or I didn't have, staging services, and all these small little things that just ate into your social proof that I was oblivious to, being an artist entrepreneur. And, throughout that season, I just put my head down with you and did it all. I was like, I got to represent myself the best way I possibly can. So.
You're amazing. So, $25,000 is it's a life-changing amount of money, right? Let's be realistic. What did that sale do for you? Not just, in terms of the emotion that you experienced and getting to see your son. Like, what else did that do? What did it do for you financially?
Yeah, I got to put a down payment on a very nice dream truck that I've always had. And then I also put a nice down payment on building a studio. So right now my studio space is not as conducive to how big I want to go. I don't have running water in this upstairs. I don't have, a 220 that supports my kiln electrical outfit. So I'm constantly kind of struggling to grow in this space. And it gave me that permission to go build that. And luckily I live and we have some land, and I have the ability to build a dream studio. So I just hired a designer to help design the whole thing. And then I could go bigger and more elaborate. And I no longer disbelieve that there's nothing that I can't do. And it literally is just taking one small step in front of the other and not really knowing where the outcome's going to come.
Yeah. One of my favorite moments of this whole experience was getting a text from you that weekend. I've been kind of just waiting to hear from you. And I get this text and it just says, I just sold Ascend, which was the name of the piece, for $20,000.
Yep.
And I was just like, holy crap, she did it.
Yep.
She believed she could do it, and she freaking did it.
Yep.
So proud of you.
Most humbling moment, life-changing, absolutely.
So proud of you.
Yep.
So I promised you I was going to ask you a question that might pull a little at your heartstrings. So if you could go back and tell that young Ashley who was struggling as a single mom, dealing with all of that stuff, what would you tell her, knowing what you know right now?
Knowing what I know right now, don't listen to people who aren't experts in that field, and to get professional advice, hire a coach. If I would have had you back when I was going to college, it would have helped me immense in college, and then be above and beyond. I wouldn't have needed to go to college. I could have saved myself tens and tens of thousands of dollars if I would have known that all this information is out there. You got to look for it, and you can't listen to that negative chatter. You can't listen to those people, the naysayers. I was surrounded by it, and nobody in my life was meant to be, toxic or, project that onto me. But it's just so rare. It's unheard of where I come from to make it as a living. And I kind of feel like I'm setting a path for the creatives here, and hopefully giving them inspiration. But, my advice is you just have to listen to people who are experts in that field. So whatever it is, whatever your niche is, you got to figure out what that is, and then, find the people who are in it. Don't take marketing advice from people who don't know how to market. Don't take advice on how to get stronger as an artist, through your dad who's an accountant. You just can't do it. It will just set you on the wrong course. I was on that desert island trying to be every kind of artist that there is, and it did me, other than good lessons, it didn't do me any good.
Yeah. So for somebody who, well, let me ask you, like, how being in our community, getting to know your peers, joining our business boot camp, if there was somebody out there that's like thinking about the possibility of taking this jump, it is a jump, it's a financial investment. That's not, we want to be fully transparent. Like, what did you get out of that experience, and what would you say to somebody who might be on the fence about that?
You're the only person who's going to invest in yourself. You're the only person who's going to give you that kind of knowledge. It's for one, it's going to be way cheaper than going to art school. And, through what I know, they don't teach you what like art marketing. And, that's not taught at the universities that I'm aware of here in Idaho. So, you got to stop, like what you told me, Rachel, deeming your success off of financial gain. Because when you invest in a program, whether that be, mindfulness or hiring an art coach or any kind of coach, you're probably not going to see a monetary or a return of investment immediately, but you can't determine that off of like the success of that. Like the growth that came out of me is the success and was the investment. And that wouldn't have came out with me if I wouldn't have hired a coach. So, I mean, I hope I'm making sense, but
Of course. Absolutely.
I mean, you're the only person who's ever going to do it for yourself. Nobody was going to hire that coach for me and to help, be that person for me, that advocate. I needed to do that for myself. I mean, I remember getting a kind of flack for telling people that I invested into an art coach and, well, how are you going to get your money out of that? And it can be so toxic. You just can't listen to those people who are not in that circle.
Yeah. Well, I wholeheartedly have just loved working with you, and I'm so excited to see what you do next, and I'm excited to be a part of your journey, to watch you just really just knuckle down last year and have such vision and do everything that you possibly could to make that vision a reality, and to then have that big win, huge win, that really is, you are blazing a trail. You're blazing a trail for people who are listening to this podcast right now. You're blazing a trail for women. You're blazing a trail for single moms out there. Like, don't ever forget that, Ash. Like, this is not even just about you right now. This is about the effect that your story is going to have, the ripple effect that could last for years, generations.
And as I get older, the more I crave that. I used to be scared of the competition, right? But now I crave that, what you just said, the ripple effect. Like, I want to help, especially single moms. I want to help them know that this is possible. You just got to put yourself in those right circles. You got to hire the right people. You got to be very careful who you listen to and the advice that you take. So knowing that I could potentially be, doing that for anybody, it makes it even that much more worth it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up, but I want you to do one thing for me. Put a big, scary goal out to the universe right now.
Yeah. Yep. It's there. Yep. I'm going back to Western design next year. I'm going to have a bigger booth. I'm going to try and go bigger, more elaborate antler chandeliers. And I'm so excited to see, what the future holds with it. So
give me a monetary number that you're going to sell and put it in the,
it's going to be
I am going to sell. Say it out loud.
a $50,000 glass antler chandelier.
Yep.
Multiple of the goal that I want to expand to that point. Like, I believe that I'm capable of it all now. It literally, that first sell is always the hardest. That first big sell, for me was the hardest. But now that it's over with, I no longer am scared of that big goal. And I totally believe in myself. It gave me that permission. Just handed it to me with,
Yeah. Ashley, thank you. Thank you for, just being so candid with your story and sharing all the little nooks and crannies that got you to that big $20,000 sale. We so appreciate you. And folks, go follow Ashley Mountain Girl Studios on Instagram. If you are not following her, go do that. You cannot describe these pieces. You have to see them with your eyes. Go take a look. If you're interested in purchasing something of Ashley's, I'm sure she will be happy to have that conversation with you. So this has been the Smart Art Business Podcast. If you liked what you heard tonight or today or this morning, wherever you are, do subscribe, consider leaving us a review, and spread the word. If you know an artist that would benefit from the information on this podcast, make sure they get this in front of them. And that is it from us. You can follow me at Rachel Wilkins Biz on Instagram, and we will be back again next week with another episode. Thanks for listening.